Welcome to Soccer Talk, a podcast about soccer mostly in Iowa, presented by Kick It Forward. Kick It Forward is a positive disruptor to the Iowa soccer community.
Thanks to our sponsors, Scott Insurance Services and Michael Keener, Attorney at Law. You need legal help, you need insurance help, those are the two to contact.
That's right. Welcome to the show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Iowa soccer supporters. I'm Ben Brackett here with my good buddy and co-host, Blake Siebers. Blake, what's up, man?
Hey, Ben, good to be doing another pod today. Back in the saddle again. We're kind of getting to refamiliarize ourselves with this, aren't we?
Yeah, this isn't a first, but definitely a first for 2020. Getting back to Game of the Week, mostly because I guess soccer has started back up in some forms, in some places, with some teams.
Yeah, I mean, we're close to a year between Game of the Week series, right?
That's pretty close. I don't know, we'll have to maybe recount a little bit of timing with the Titan Tactician, who's back in the studio with us today. We're pretty excited to have him. I know he was. We saw him over the weekend, and he was just couldn't stop talking about how excited he was to get on the pod.
Yeah, it's been quite a while for him, isn't it? I hope he hope he remembers how to do this thing.
I know. We'll see if he's been, kind of sharpening his skills, honing his eye in a little bit to catch all the really, really clever stuff that he always gets. So what else, Blake? So you teased who we were gonna take in. Well, how did you describe it again?
Oh, the old the large,
large, expansive scenic. Against the Elvis, the home of Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
So that, of course, translates to Grandview hosting Graceland. Well, I don't know if it totally makes sense, but it did at the time, last week. Kind of makes sense now.
Yeah, so we made it out to County for the women's matchup nearly a week ago now with, like you said, with Graceland traveling north to play the Grandview women.
Yeah, and interesting kind of overall, going out to County and there only being one field with lights on. It's kind of, there weren't very many people in the stands. Everybody was masked. Everybody was kind of standing away from each other, but still fun. From where we were, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Standing away from each other.
Yeah, no, it was good. I don't know. Should we introduce the Titan Tactician here?
Let's just do it. Let's get into it.
Get his thoughts.
Welcome, Titan Tactician, to the studio. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Good to be back with you guys.
You seem like just so pumped to be here. Did you enjoy watching that game the other night?
I did. I am pumped to be here. I'm pumped that we've got some soccer going back on. It was a long hiatus here over the spring and into the summer, dealing with the corona here, and so it was. It's nice to be back in the studio with you guys. It was nice just to go out and see a game, even though there's still some restrictions and we got to talk to each other through masks and stuff like that. It was good to see soccer being played again.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better night.
Yeah, our weatherman was on the spot. Do you recall how the weather was?
Yeah,
meteorologist, man?
67 degrees, I think, at like the 7:33 kickoff. The men's game ran a little late. Mosquitoes were definitely making their presence known, which was the first time I felt them all year.
Absolutely, but probably the first time you've been down the old river valley. So
that's true.
Why don't we talk about the game a little bit? So, I'm just going to be the dumb guy. I'm guessing this is their first game of the season, or have they been playing games before this? Have they played because they're just playing in the conference, correct?
Correct. So it was definitely Grandview's first game, and then Graceland had started with a 2-1 loss to Jamestown, and then a heartbreaking double overtime loss to Waldorf. So they came in 0-2, and like you said, Grandview came in making their debut for the season.
Yeah, we kind of knew ahead of time, just from talking to the coaches and from what we knew of the two teams, that Grandview is always going to be a physical team. They, according to Ozzy in the pregame interview, he kind of addressed that and just said they're really physical, really athletic, and they were going to bring a competitive game straight out of the gate. What did you think? What did it look like to you, old tactician?
Well, I mean, this game probably for me was a little bit different than maybe some of the other games of the week that we've covered over the last year or so. Um, More so just because of at least my familiarity with the Graceland team. So, um, for me, like I said, number one, just going to see a game was pretty cool, I thought. But there's, we are as an organization, Kick It Forward is pretty heavily involved with the Graceland women's soccer team on a number of different projects. And so to see some of the kids that and some of the female athletes that were competing in the game, and knowing and understanding some of the other projects that we've got going, and some different ways that a lot of those kids are contributing to either what we do or to their own communities was a cool thing. So I thought it was just kind of taking into consideration the complete picture. It was good to be there, and even more so than just seeing the actual gameplay.
Yeah, understood. I always love getting to see guys that either I used to coach or have run across in my days previously. So I saw a couple Graceland guys there that had just gotten done. The Graceland men actually kind of upset the Grandview men, if I remember correctly.
They did, and like you said, we kind of pulled in there, and what a cool little atmosphere, kind of as the game drew on, at least on the women's side, where the fans were getting into it and a couple chants. So that kind of added to everything, I thought.
Yeah, so let's get down to the game. Blake, you've got some of the stats pulled up. Saheg, I'm sure you've got some insight on the first half. The biggest thing that stood out to me was the bugs, but that was because I was standing behind the camera. Talk to me a little bit about the first half, though.
Sure. Well, let me give you. I'll give you my thoughts on the game, obviously, but for me, just watching the game, kind of as I was soaking it all in. I guess I was in two minds, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but the game was good, and immediately my thought was as I sort of looked out at the 22 players in the field, I started recognizing, I guess, some of the players in the Graceland team that I'm familiar with, and so for me, watching the game, it was, I guess, through two lenses. One was watching the game, but then also having an understanding or seeing who the athletes were that were on the field. And I don't know that we ever have really kind of identified or articulated some of the backstory to how I or the organization knows some of these kids, and so maybe now's a better time than ever. But there are a number of the kids in the Graceland women's soccer team that are actually from California, and probably 3 or 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to go out to California, and this was kind of just in the kind of, I would call the budding years of Kick It Forward, or in the last couple of years before, and we've kind of really taken off and started to get engaged in a number of different projects. But I can remember distinctly going out to the San Diego area. It's in a town called Hemet, California, and seeing a couple of high school soccer games. And as I was out there, and I was talking to various folks and some of the parents and the coaches that support the players, we came to know that there was this opportunity out there where there were a number of kids who weren't necessarily a part of the sort of typical club system out in California. Maybe didn't have the money to pay thousands and thousands of dollars a year to do club programming, but wanted to play college soccer and wanted to use their abilities to, use soccer as a vehicle to get an education. And so we were able to actually form a team called the Golden State Soccer Team out in California. And a number of California kids started playing with that team, and so, anyways, when that was 3 or 4 years ago. As I fast forward to the game last week, there were a number of kids who were in that Golden State team over the last couple of years, and before they got to Graceland, that actually ended up getting college scholarships or opportunities to play at school. So I thought that was a really cool situation, because as I looked down the roster and some of the kids that were actually contributing, they're now juniors and seniors in that team, and there's a number of them. But I'll just highlight a couple of that I saw on the field. So the right back is a player named Kylie. She's a senior now, and she was a right back. I thought she had a good game, but even sort of more importantly, there's a kid who 4 years ago was out in California, didn't know if she was going to play college soccer or not. At least that's my understanding, and now. 3 or 4 years later, she's playing in a game, and she's a senior, and she's stuck with it. I know that probably as a freshman and sophomore, maybe she didn't get a ton of time, and her playing time has only increased as she got older. But there's a senior and an impact player in the team who took a chance, came out to Iowa, has done really well for the team, and featured well in the game last night. A couple other kids too. They're Graceland striker. If you're using the number system, which a lot of people use now, it was Graceland's number 9, Carissa Fleck. She was their target player. She's another kid, came up from California, was an impact player on the night, did a nice job. And then for me, the player of the game, at least for Graceland, Talia was their right winger. She actually scored the first goal. She's another California kid who, again, in the first 2 years as I watched the team, didn't get a whole lot of playing time, and now she's sort of stuck it out, and she's worked herself into the team, and she's a big time and an impact player. And so kind of looking at the whole picture, it was really cool, I think, to almost see the full cycle for a lot of these kids where they had a cool soccer experience in California. They used soccer as a vehicle to come play, and now they're impact players in a team, and they're going to be graduating. And so that I think then the third piece to that, just when watching the game, and this doesn't have anything really to do with how they played, or the actual soccer game, but at the end of the day, for most of us who watch college sports, we say it's about the student athlete and the full experience. But a number of these kids, and in fact, all the Graceland women's soccer team have also helped kick it forward out in our mini pitch initiative. So we've got 2 mini pitches that we just installed a couple of months ago in Lamoni. In the back of the school there, and that whole team has run clinics out there for kids in the youth community. And so, as I sort of was watching the game and I started to think about what we're all about as an organization and sort of what sort of projects we like to support, to me that was kind of the 360-degree view about what we're all about. It's about giving kids the opportunity or helping them facilitate sort of their passion for the game, creating opportunities to play, and then having them be good stewards in their community. And so that was a big part of, as I watched the game and as I looked at it analytically, in the end, I was really less interested in the score, and I was more sort of thinking, I hope that for the kids that played in that game and who have been sort of a part of what we've done and how we've grown, I hope that they can kind of take a moment to reflect on the last several years and say, hey, you know what a cool sort of experience and ride this has been, especially for the seniors in that team and some of the juniors, because I know there's a number of them still coming through.
So this guy, the Titan Tactician, who's generally so analytical and objective, could barely watch the game without letting his emotions get in the way. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk some specifics, since obviously all that stuff you talked about is totally true, and it's interesting when you're watching a game how hard it is to separate your emotions from it if you're invested in any of the players or if you're if you're invested in the team in any way, how challenging that can become. So we'll see if you were able to do it still, because we do want to talk about the game a little bit as well. So. I know when we were sitting there in the first half talking, I remember Grandview playing very, side to side and keeping the ball, but very rarely getting in and behind or around to create chances. Whereas maybe Graceland was a little bit more, sucking the pressure up, and they had some quick players on the counter, and they'd look to stretch them straight away. Does that track with the way you saw the game in our conversation, or not so much?
Yeah. So the way I would describe the game is probably physicality versus organization and shape. So that, and maybe of sort of a tactic or plan for how you want to play. Grandview for me is full of athletes and full of sort of physical specimens that are much more athletic than Graceland players as a whole. I think, number 7 I looked at the roster online, but they've got none of the names next to the numbers, so it's kind of difficult for me to tell who all the Grandview players were. But number 7, I mean, clearly probably their best player. At times it looked like she played up front. And then number 21 as well. Every time that the ball kind of got near them and in the attacking third, the question was, well, is this the time when they're going to break through? Is this the time when they're going to get through the back four of Graceland? Until, but for, one opportunity, I think one opportunity in the first half where they got in behind and missed a chance, and then probably the penalty in the second half, they didn't get through. And so that's why I say, physicality versus tactics and organization. I think Graceland had a really good game from an organizational perspective. I think they had a plan for how they wanted to play, and for all but except one play, really, they kept everything in front of their back four. And anything that got in behind the back four sort of dribbled into their goalkeeper, who didn't have to make any saves that I can recall, except for picking the ball up probably a handful of times. So on the flip side of that, then it seemed like Graceland, when they got the ball, they tried to play into their target player and then have players run off of her, and it looked like that was going to be the theme from their perspective right off the bat. Probably in the first couple of minutes, I think the ball goes into the striker and it gets played out wide to Talia. Talia goes down the line, has a really good cross in. And, a great cross just kind of slips through and nobody gets a head on it or nobody gets a foot on it or anything. But I think it was an opportunity where the Grandview goalkeeper probably saw a cross come in, was kind of in no man's land and didn't come out to get it, but watched a really good cross come across. And it's the type of pass that ultimately would make a goalkeeper think, hey, should I go and get that ball or not? And the only reason I point that out is because only a couple of minutes later, there was Talia again, coming down the right-hand side, and she struck the ball across the field again. Probably going to be debatable whether or not it was a cross or a shot.
It was a cross.
Probably a cross, yeah, if we're being honest.
She was going to say it's a shot.
Yeah, but I think what happens is the goalkeeper's caught off our line then, and so goalkeeper's probably thinking cross. I'm going to have to come out and get it. She's off her line, and Talia mishits it into the top corner. So I think the
It's just
first
like one
cross.
step too, right? That's all it
Yes,
is.
but I think the first really, really good cross probably tells the goalkeeper, hey, she can serve a nice ball in, and makes the goalkeeper come off our line a little bit, and she mishits it into the goal. So
Sounds a lot more like the Titan Tactician.
yeah, well, I didn't realize I would get scolded for being a little bit more broader about the analysis of the game, but so apologize for that, Ben. But
It's all right.
I think that's generally the nature of the game. I thought that if I was Grandview, if I was playing against Graceland, I would play totally differently. Understanding that the player selection that's in that team, I probably would put my best 3 athletes, probably no more than 5 yards from each other. I would have put them on their 2 center backs or their back line, and I would have lumped balls in there, and I would have absolutely peppered Graceland's back line trying to get through. Because I think if they would have got through a couple of times, it could have been 2 or 3 or 4-0, that type of a game. But that's not how they played. They went side to side and backwards quite often. And I think that when you totally dominate a team physically like that, ultimately, and in any game, you have to be able to penetrate or play the ball forwards. And I think if Grandview's going to tweak something, I'd say they become more effective by going forwards as opposed to side. That's my observation for them. And then I think just Graceland they're not a team of athletes. If they're gonna put complete games together, they're gonna do it this year by winning games 1-0 or 2-1, by being organized at the back and being collective and sort of a cohesive whole, which I think they were able to do for most of that game. And I'm sure they'll grow within the season. But it looked like 2 distinct styles and 2 totally different teams. But it made for a good match.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, 1-1 result was probably fair for both squads.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say so. I mean,
Well, but you sort of allude to the fact that in the second half, Graceland was organized, but at a certain point, you have to have something going forward, and Grandview was just pushing forward, putting them under pressure. At a certain point, like we were standing there, like, oh, it looks like they're going to give up a goal. Like, it just looked like it was going to eventually happen if enough time passed without the game ending.
yeah, it did. I think one of the things Graceland did too. I think they found their Carissa's feet pretty often, but then Carissa would get it and she would actually get it and turn, and she would have lots of space in front of her, but she never really drove forward against the defenders. She would get it, she would receive it, and she would turn, and maybe she would play wide. And so, maybe some of those opportunities for Graceland are created by when they actually effectively get to the target's feet. She's actually got to run in the back line a couple times, because you're right, that would probably some more attacking on the Graceland side would have taken some pressure certainly off their back four.
Yeah, well, we talked about too the back four with Ozzy at halftime. What did he say? Like, he was talking about how the left back is one of their less mobile players, and so they were working really hard to kind of protect that side of the field. And ultimately, that was kind of how that was where the attacks kept coming. It was just down that right side, and you mentioned the right back being almost like a right winger for Grandview.
Yeah, so I missed the actual penalty or the foul, but I mean, I saw it looked like he was just kind of get through. But there was one chance in the first half where the left back got caught square as it went into maybe number 7 or number 21, and which ended up having to commit the two center backs, and that's when the sort of half chance was created. But I think that's probably what Ozzy was talking about right at halftime. It's like, hey, if we get caught square, that's where we're going to face sort of maybe a half chance, and it sounds like maybe that's the one other time that it happened in the second half, and they ended up punishing with a penalty. But I mean, I would say if you're Graceland, you're saying I don't think it's a fair result because we played well enough to win. We just made one mistake, and don't forget, Talia actually has a chance to win the game in the overtime.
I was going to say in the overtime there were chances on both sides of the ball, weren't there?
Yeah, there was an unbelievable chance for Graceland. The ball just kind of sat at Talia's feet, and you were wondering, is she going to hit it in the back of the net? And it looked like maybe it just surprised her, and she almost got caught in two minds. It's like, the ball's right in front of me. Can I get to it? Can I shoot it? But that could have been easily 2-1 the other way as well. So
the last 20 minutes were probably the most enjoyable from a neutral standpoint, I thought.
It opened up a lot.
More chances created there in the last 20 than there was the first 90.
Well, and that probably goes to show that neither team really wants to draw at that point, do they? After you play all that time, you're not saying, well, a draw sounds good. I'd be curious too. You just talked about how sort of each team had some very distinct style to it. Graceland has played a couple games so far. Grandview hasn't. I'm just wondering, one, like, these are opponents that like Ozzy and Vinci know each other, and Graceland and Grandview play against each other every year. So like there's similar players every year, a similar style of play. Do you think that they're like reviewing a lot of film and doing that kind of stuff and scouting reports, or is it more, it seems to me at least that both teams were more concerned about playing the way, like their style, and trying to impose it on the other team as opposed to, worrying about what the other team was doing?
yeah, I guess I would. That's a good question for their managers more so than it is for me, Ben. But in terms of how much film they're using,
no, I'm just curious. Like, what? So, like, when you're saying, you're basing it off of watching the first, say, like 25 minutes of the game. You're saying, okay, at halftime, here are the changes I might have made.
yeah.
But like, you also know that like that's you're looking at a fresh eye. Like maybe if you're Vinci, you're going like, no, like if this is our game plan, we're going to stick to it. And so I'm just curious, like, how often are you, if you're coaching, are you going to like bring everybody in and change things, or are you going to stick with the plan?
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, I don't know Vinci as well over at Grandview. I've watched them enough over the last few years. I think they always have a distinct style. I think we saw it. I think they're always got really good athletes that look like they can score, and they often move the ball just like they move the ball on the weekend.
Yeah, move the ball well.
I mean, I know Ozzy quite a bit better, and have been around him for a long time. I think he prepares his team for each individual game. I think his teams are always well organized. But I know that he always comes in with a plan that's unique to each opponent. So I think my suspicion would be that coming into play Grandview, he knew exactly what he was dealing with. He knew the collection of players that he had. He knew that he was physically outmatched, and so it was pretty much the objective was, I mean, keep the ball in front of us and don't want to penetrate the back four. And I think he alluded to that as well at halftime after the game, saying, "Hey, it was one breakdown. That's it."
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's some video watching as well, but it's kind of tough to watch video as well when it's the first game of the
Well,
season.
yeah, that was kind of what I was trying to point out. Was it's unlikely that either team has had a chance to like get a look at each other really at this point. So it was probably, and I would also be curious like how much of this is. It's such a weird deal, right? Their seasons have been totally altered by the pandemic. So I just wonder how much. If there's I'm sure there's a very competitive approach to it, but I always wonder too, like, is it like kind of a throwaway season? Like the same way people say, oh, well, Liverpool, it's like got a little asterisk next to it because they won the Premier League during the pandemic or whatever.
Well, I think it'll be interesting with the NAI. I mean, there's a lot of foreign students, right? And
Right.
I know Ozzy had mentioned that he had a plethora of players that were unable to, or I don't know what the right word is, that I guess are not in school this fall.
Yeah, that's
and I think-
you covered me on that because that was where I was trying to go. Like, how much of this is there like a little asterisk that goes, well, this isn't our best team.
But I think that may open up, if that's the case everywhere, that may open up some opportunities for other kids and then other programs as well.
Yeah, it seems like
interesting.
each individual institution is sort of got different challenges because there's different standards and different rules that apply depending on who your coach is or who your administration is and stuff like that. I mean, case in point, right? We could talk to the Graceland coaches and sort of interact with them during and after the game. Obviously everyone sort of had their PPE on or the masks on and stuff like that, but Grandview was totally different, and they had said that school didn't necessarily want to do interviews and stuff like that for COVID reasons. So I think you just got different standards and different rules, and everyone's trying to do the best that they can. I think ultimately there's an asterisk by this season, certainly. Whether or not you want to use that asterisk as a justification for your results is going to be sort of up to your own interpretation, or on your own sort of desire. But there's definitely an asterisk, I think, next to this season for sure. They weren't able to train in the spring.
Right.
It's affected how everything they've done in the summer. Players aren't there, some players aren't there. I'm sure there's different protocols and different, safety stuff that they're dealing with that affects training and affects preparation for the game too. So, and obviously women's soccer is not an exception to every other sport out there right now too. It's just COVID has totally changed the way we're living our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
But I love that they figure out a way to play.
Yeah, right on.
Right, that was the best part one of the best parts about the game too. Like, hey, here's a game. Like, let's go watch some soccer.
Yeah, it was fun. You got anything else for us, TT?
No, I think that's about it, Ben. I think I've been scolded for going a little bit too long at the beginning, so I'm sure I'll be scolded after the podcast as well. And if I get invited back, I'll see you next time.
I'm just glad you got to the tactics, because that was Ben's. Ben was getting pretty worked up over here.
All right, well, thanks for joining us.
Good to see you guys again.
All right, Blake, that was fun. I love getting back in the studio and doing a little game of the week. I love getting to see a game in person. It was kind of funny, though, sitting there trying to set up the camera ahead of the game, and somebody was a little rusty, weren't they?
Yeah, we had quite a little bit of a debacle as far as being rusty, the battery on the camera, all sorts of issues.
Our software wasn't working either. It was fun, though. Had a great time.
Yes, that's it. And like you said, there were kids out playing, and students, parents watching, and coaches coaching, and referees refereeing, and trying to get back to some normalcy.
Yep, right on. So this is coming as a sort of a special edition episode, because all these Game of the Weeks are somewhat timely. So instead, now we'll see you again still on Friday. We've got another interview to quick put together before the end of the week, and then we're kind of staying on our path, aren't we, Siebes?
We're trying to.
Discipline. All right. Speaking of discipline, Twitter @kick_forward, Instagram @kick.it.forward, Facebook at @kickitforward_IA. TikTok. Is TikTok even a thing still in the United States? Brody's here. Brody, are you ready for soccer tonight, dude? Now you're not going to talk? No.
Want to talk in the
He
middle of
wants
the
to talk.
interview?
He does. In the studio audience, you never know what's going to happen, do you?
Nope. So stay tuned and see what happens next episode.
Yep. See you guys.